life insurers put life into the things you live for. The new factory that's hiring your neighbors. Maintenance on the bridge that keeps traffic flowing. The paycheck that puts pizza night on the table. Life insurers contribute $8 trillion to communities and local economies through bond purchases and other investments, and protect the financial security of 90 million American families, like yours. See how life insurers put life into America at acli.com. Paid for by the American Council of Life Insurers.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Thanks so much for joining this afternoon on a very, very warm Saturday afternoon. It feels like I guess this is officially the first day of summer, but the temperature outside, at least where I am on the East Coast, does feel like it's the first day of summer. We're going to hit the mid-90s here in Washington, D.C. I hope it's warm but sunny where you are, and I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining. We keep signing up new affiliates every week on the show, so I am so honored. If you're a new station or a new listener, thanks for joining. We're on every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 2 p.m., and that is Eastern time, and appreciate everyone joining. So I want to usually I start with my 10-minute lecture on the show, but today, because I have a special guest that is one of my heroes and one of my the guys who has taught me and the country, and presidents from Ronald Reagan to Donald Trump economics, and I'm talking, of course, about the great Arthur Laffer, is on, and he's only got a short time with us, but I wanted to get him on because I want him to explain what's going on with the Fed, what's going on with the economy. Arthur, I know you're just back from a long trip to Indonesia, so thanks for coming on this afternoon.
My pleasure, Steve, and thanks for the kind introduction. I wish my mom could have heard that one.
All right, I want to get right down to it.
She would have actually believed you.
Yeah. So, the Fed, let's talk about the Fed. You
Sure.
are known for obviously being one of the most influential economists in the world on taxation, but a lot of people don't know your actual area of expertise is monetary policy. And will you just explain what's going on with monetary policy? We've got President Trump, Arthur, who's angry at the Fed for not lowering rates. I understand arguments on both sides of that equation. I'm kind of undecided about it, but Trump is angry. He wants to get rid of Powell. First of all, tell us, what do you think the Fed should be doing? And, do you think that, that Trump is right to be angry at Powell?
Well, let me just say what the Fed should be doing. The Fed should be following interest rates, not trying to set interest rates.
Okay.
They should
hold on. Stop right there.
Yes.
So, because people don't understand what that means, because most listeners believe the Fed does set interest rates. But I've always said, wait a minute. What? Okay, go ahead.
It can set interest rates, but it shouldn't.
Okay. So, what do you mean by that?
Well, what they should do is let interest rates seek their own level, do nothing whatsoever, and let interest rates and markets clear. Then once they clear, then the Fed should change the monetary base in response to changes in interest rates or in changes in prices. Now, what Paul Volcker did was he looked at spot commodity prices, and if they were rising, spot commodity prices were rising. He told us that the Fed was too loose and that what he should do is sell bonds in the open market and reduce the quantity of money outstanding until those interest rates started falling. And once they start falling, that's the real thing you should do. Now, if interest rates are falling and the spot commodity prices are falling and shouldn't be falling, then what he should do is buy bonds in the open market, increase the monetary base, and thereby really stabilize the price level over the long run. That's what they should do. Now,
okay, so hold on, because most of our economists, our listeners, are not professional economists. So I just want to make sure I and my listeners understand what you're saying. So you're almost saying like that they should follow what's happening with the commodity prices and use that as a kind of forward-looking gauge in terms of
whether inflation is rising or falling. Yes, exactly.
And you're saying that that's what Paul Volcker did to help break the back of inflation in the early 80s.
Spot commodity prices are gold. And if gold prices are rising, it tells you there's too much money.
Yes.
And therefore, what you do is you sell bonds in the open market and contract the monetary base until money is scarce enough to bring that gold price back down. If gold prices are falling, it tells you there's not enough money. And what they should do is buy bonds in the open market, expand the monetary base until that gold price comes back up. The Fed's doing exactly the wrong way. When they set an interest rate and there's too much money and they set the interest rate, what they have to do is keep on buying bonds and keep on buying bonds to keep that interest, and they lead to the very inflation they're trying to cure. So they should not set interest rates. They should set the spot commodity prices.
Yeah.
It's a price.
Okay, so it's almost that's called like a price rule, right? Where you're trying to keep the price
rule that we should have, because it's prices that we're concerned about, Steve. We're concerned about inflation, not about the quantity of money. The quantity of money is irrelevant as far as people are concerned. What they want to know is that prices will stay stable for long periods of time.
Right.
And what they want to do is see them change the monetary base, or money supply, if you will, to keep prices stable for as far as the eye can see, so you and I can do contracts with each other in dollars and know what it means.
So when I go back to my Economics 100 course, back 45 years ago, it was basically why do you have a currency? You want a currency that retains value, right?
That's right.
And that also is a means of exchange. I think I think there might be one other. So what you're saying is
a store of value as well, but
and a store of value. Okay. So in that case, if you have a currency that's jumping up and down, it loses a bit of that function, right?
It loses a lot of that function. In fact, it's lost a lot right now. I mean, just look at the inflation rate. I mean, 2% doesn't seem like a heck of a lot to people, but let me tell you, from 1913 to the present, the price level in the United States has increased 33-fold, 3,300%.
Wow.
The price of gold has gone from $20.67 an ounce to $3,300 an ounce. So, this is the long-run degradation and despoilage of the U.S. currency. There is no need for that. From 1790, Steve, until 1913, what is that? That's 123 years. The price level remained stable. There was no aggregate inflation throughout that whole period. Now, we had periods where inflation went up and down, but it stayed stable for that whole 123 years. But once we put in the Powell types of people, bang, it went. And that's just the wrong way to do it. And these people don't know the difference. They aren't good economists. They don't understand money. And, they sit there and diddle around, and it's just silly.
But Larry, I was going to call you Larry. Arthur,
that's okay.
You know that there are 300 PhD economists over there at the Fed.
PhD is a false word, Steve. It means piled higher and deeper in their sense.
Right.
It takes a PhD in economics not to be able to understand the obvious, Steve. And these guys are really, really ruining it.
Yeah, it's true.
Did I tell you why Fed economists have round shoulders and flat foreheads?
Why?
You ask them a question, they shake their shoulders, you tell them the answer, and they slap their forehead. Yeah. It's embarrassing to see how ignorant these people are on monetary policy, and yet they're appointed because of favoritism or whatever the hell it is. And I just hope Trump appoints a good person for the Fed to be Fed chairman. My favorite of all favorites is Kevin Warsh, as you know.
Yep.
I just think he's spectacular. He understands exactly what I'm describing to you. Yeah. And that's not an easy concept for people to get. Because, the first thing you do is you ask, well, should they be raising rates or lowering rates? No, that's not what they should be doing. They should be letting markets set the rate.
Yes.
And they should set the quantity of the monetary base, or the quantity of money, if you want to call it that. But that's what they should do. And if rates go up, they should allow their discount rate to rise with it to keep the balance there. But they should not be setting rates. They should be following rates.
So if we have I think there's a mythology at the Fed that by pumping more money into the economy, that will create economic growth.
Ouch.
Explain why that.
Inflation of 50% per minute.
Yeah.
What do you think would happen to economic growth?
It'd crash.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's just common sense, Steve.
But the Keynesians really believe just if you've got
prosperity.
I know, but how can you have so many people who think that, the economy's weak, so let's just keep almost like all we have to do is just have the printing presses.
Let me just say that economic education, as taught in the universities, has been despoiled and lowered substantially in the last 70 years.
Right.
I mean, really has. And it's a shame because, I mean, every one of the economists in my generation back then understood this difference. None of them today does. I mean, literally none. Bob Mundell, all of them did. The big battle was between monetarists and people who wanted stable prices. And, you know, the stable prices people are the right answer. Yeah. But the others won the battle. And now you have this whole school of people in there. And look at what they've done to our money process.
I know.
As I told you, from 1913 to the present, 3,300% increase in prices.
That's inflation. Pretty soon we're going to have wheelbarrows, for the money.
Well, that's exactly right. But you won't have money anymore, as we know. The U.S. dollar. Everyone says, is the dollar going to be replaced with the global currency? No, the dollar should be replaced because of bad Fed policy, not because of foreign currency.
There you go. Arthur Laffer, you are one of the top economists in the world. I hope you are the next Fed chairman, but Kevin Warsh would be awfully good too, and that's great advice. So I appreciate you carving a few minutes out of your Saturday afternoon, Arthur, for coming on the More Money Show.
Steve, you know that, and I love your audience, by the way. You and Larry just do a great job on this show. And my hat's off to you.
Thanks, Arthur. That's Arthur Laffer, the famous economist. This is the More Money Show, and we will be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hi, folks. This is Steve Moore. This is the Red Apple Audio Network, and I want to say thank you to our affiliates throughout the country. We just took this show national, and I'm just so pleased we're picking up so many stations. And so thank you to the folks who run the stations around the country for picking us up. And thank you if you're new to the show. We talk about economics. We talk about politics. We talk about finance and how you can make more money. So thank you. Join us every afternoon on Saturday, and we will be having a good time. And by the way, we try to make economics fun. We just had a great discussion with the great economist Arthur Laffer. I've always said, by the way, I'm not nearly the best radio talk show host, but I would submit that I bring on some of the best guests in the country. We had the great Arthur Laffer, and now we shift to one of my favorite senators in the entire United States Senate, and that's Kevin Cramer of the great state of North Dakota. Senator, I know you've got soccer games this afternoon and all this stuff with the grandkids and kids. Thanks so much for carving out some time for us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Steve. And I'm just grateful to hear of your success on the radio, and I'm not even a little bit surprised. But if you can make economics fun, I'm all for it. But
Exactly.
the most fun economics can be is when they're good.
Well, I got a question for you. You got to help me get your stations there in North Dakota on our show, because I think we got a couple of them. But
we got to get. Why don't your buddy Scott Hennon and Flag Family Media?
I'm going to
book you. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great idea. Great idea. I do Scott's show a lot, and he's got the biggest radio station. Now, most of our listeners don't know a lot about North Dakota, Senator. I bet a lot of them haven't even been to North Dakota. Are you in North Dakota right now, sir?
I am. I'm in Fargo. I'm in a parking lot of West Acres Shopping Center, which isn't very sexy, but it's Fargo.
Oh, that's great. So I love North Dakota. I've been there for many energy conferences because I think, I think a lot of our listeners are aware, but some of them probably aren't aware that North Dakota has become an energy capital of the world. Explain how that happened.
Well, first of all, God blessed us with a lot of rich minerals. We have a lot of oil, a lot of gas, a lot of coal, and a lot of ingenuity. We also have a stewardship culture in agriculture, which allows us to take good care of the land and the water and the air.
So you've got a lot of wheat. You got a lot. Is it wheat? Is it wheat that you grow?
We have a lot of wheat. We have a lot of corn. We're number one producer of sunflowers, honey, wheat, barley, a whole bunch of crops, a lot of soybeans, of course. I think we have like 6 of the top 10 producing counties in soybeans. So we do it all, and we look to sell it to lots of people.
Now here on the East Coast where I am, I'm in D.C. today, Washington D.C., where it's 95 degrees and it's hot and humid. I bet it's not hot and humid today in North Dakota.
Well, according to my car, it's 82 degrees right now, but it's on its way to 90. So
well, that's hot for North Dakota.
It is, yeah. It is.
There. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about a few things, if I may, and I gotta appreciate you. I know how busy you are, and you fly back and forth to DC all the time. I mean, you've got one of the longest commutes. But let's talk about the big, beautiful bill. We are all hopeful. Have you got a guess about when we're gonna get this thing passed out of the Senate?
About the time that every Republican senator is ready to tip over from voting all night long, at least through one night, maybe two. So it's really more about the human condition than it is about the calendar or the clock.
Now, so what you're talking about is something they call vote-a-rama, right? Where you have all these amendments and that can go on for hours and hours and hours and hours. And when do you expect that will begin?
I think it'll begin Thursday, the way it's looking. I think so. So, the goal, of course, is to have a bill done and passed out of the Senate by the 4th of July, or maybe, even by the 1st of July, in which case the House could come back and give it a thumbs up and the president could sign it on Independence Day. Wouldn't that be appropriate?
That would be awesome. So what do you like? I was on Larry Kudlow's radio show earlier today, and we both agreed we give the Senate bill a B+, which is a pretty good grade. Not an A, but a B+.
Not bad for you guys. Yeah. You're tough graders.
We're tough graders. So, are you happy with the bill?
I am, Steve, because remember the reason it's a big, beautiful bill is because I think, the post-traumatic stress that still exists from 2017 when we had a bill that passed the House, I think by one vote, to eliminate and repeal and replace Obamacare, got of course the big thumbs down from John McCain, and it failed by one vote in the Senate. And so not wanting to run the risk of incremental pieces of legislation, which, by the way, I would have preferred. However, one big, beautiful bill presents the best opportunity to pass a lot of things in addition to the most important thing, Steve, and this is why I like the bill. Making the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the Donald Trump 2017 tax package that you and Larry Kudlow helped create, making that policy permanent law is worth a lot of other stuff that gets attached to it. Now, right?
Senator,
so some of the things are good and some of them aren't.
We got to take a hard break. Can I hold you on to the next segment? Do you have a few minutes?
Of course. Yep.
Okay. This is Kevin Cramer, the senator from North Dakota. This is the More Money Show, and we'll be right back, folks.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Life insurers put life into the things you live for. The new factory that's hiring your neighbors. Maintenance on the bridge that keeps traffic flowing. The paycheck that puts pizza night on the table. Life insurers contribute $8 trillion to communities and local economies through bond purchases and other investments, and protect the financial security of 90 million American families, like yours. See how life insurers put life into America at acli.com. Paid for by the American Council of Life Insurers.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant.
Whoa, that's refreshing.
And a 9.5 plus pH for every way you move.
I did take a Spain class today.
Restoring like a pro. Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
By the way, Kevin Cramer, did you ever watch the movie Jaws?
Oh, many times. I haven't gone swimming since, for 50 years. Yeah.
Exactly. It hurt the beach towns a lot that people were afraid to go in the water. I remember that first scene where the girl goes out into the ocean in the middle of late at night, and the shark is chasing her. That's one of the scariest movies any movie. So I wanted to just get that in, folks, because we celebrate the great movies. And by the way, do you remember the most famous quote in that movie, Senator?
Oh, I do not. I'm sure I will when you say it.
It was, it looks like we're going to need a bigger boat. Anyway, so I'm here. We have fun on this show. I'm here with the great Senator Kevin Cramer from the great state of North Dakota, and we're talking about all the things that are going on in the Senate. And the senator is saying we might be able to get this bill done by and passed and signed. Boy, I agree with you. Wouldn't that be cool if Trump could sign this bill to liberate the American economy on July 4th. I'm a little doubtful, but it would be cool if he could. So one of the things I'm concerned with, Senator, is that I don't understand why we're not getting rid of these Green New Deal subsidies. We had something in our hotline the other day, and I know you get the hotline, and I know a lot of your colleagues do, and a lot of our listeners do. And, some of these, we're not getting rid of some of these crazy wind and solar subsidies for another 10 years. I don't understand it.
Well, and there's a lot of work being done on that, Steve, as we speak.
Good.
Some of it's this. Some of it is just that the utilities and the big energy companies have been investing in wind farms and solar farms and things for the last 20, 30 years. In case of the production tax credit for wind, it's been around almost 35 years, Steve.
I know.
They wouldn't put up a single wind turbine without the subsidy. However,
that's true.
When they make investments based on current law, and then they feel sort of like you're pulling the rug out from under them.
That's true too.
I reject. It is true, but I do reject it because, come on, if you haven't seen the signals, they all say, well, we want to be part of the AI revolution, to which I say, if you carpet the entire country with wind farms and solar panels, you couldn't do that. So let's focus not on the, tax subsidized low rates. Let's focus on reliable baseload electricity like nuclear and coal and gas. And the other complaint, Steve, that often comes is that, well, there's such a backlog of for parts and gas turbines, they're not making them fast enough. To which I say, that's because we've been subsidizing the other junk for so long that the market signals have warped the entire system. The best way to change that is to eliminate those other, wind and solar in particular. These are not new industries. This is not emerging technology.
They go back to the Middle Ages.
That's exactly right. So I just think, to me, if we could fix one thing big in the Senate, it would be to expedite the repeal of those. And
well, I hope you succeed.
We have other industry, we should help that, but we gotta misappropriated priorities right now.
Yeah, I go back in Washington, I think maybe even a little bit further than you do, because I arrived in 1984, and back then, we were, some of these subsidies just began with the wind and the solar stuff. And, and, they kept saying just for 5 years, and then 5 years, just 5 more years, and then more years, and 5 more years. And it never ends. Yeah. And so, when they say 5 more years, what they really mean is permanent.
Yeah, that's why the 5 years turns into 10 or 12, to your point, because you have these little definitions like, do you begin the subsidy when the shovel goes in the ground? Do you begin it when, it's in service? And if it's in service, then it's good for 12 years, which is 12 more. So all of these little tricks of the swamp trade are these little definitions that turn what looks like a 3-year subsidy into a 13-year subsidy. Yeah. And that's why I think we just have to clean all that out.
And it costs a lot of money. And by the way, I believe, I'm a free market guy like you are. And by the way, we're mutual friends with the great Dick Armey, who was, one of the great guys in Washington ever. And I learned a lot of my economics from him. He wasn't too happy with those subsidies either. But I actually believe, Senator, and I'd love your reaction to this. I think that we've been subsidizing that industry for 35, 40 years. And I really believe the wind and solar industry would be further along if we'd never subsidized them at all and just let the free market work.
Well, if people want it, I was an energy regulator for 10 years in North Dakota, where we produced not only a lot of coal for electricity to Minnesota, but a lot of wind as well.
Yeah, because it's windy up there.
Because it's windy, and we have these wonderful bluffs, and it works really well. However, I never once voted to allow wind energy in rate base for North Dakota ratepayers because it's not reliable. It's duplicative. You don't even, you only get it about 15% of the time. So I've never been a fan of wind energy.
Okay. In our last 5 minutes, Senator, I completely agree with you. Talking to Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, one of the best, most free market guys we've got over there, and one of the best economic minds too. I don't even know if you're a professional economist. Probably you're not. But
no, I dodged that bullet. But.
All right, I want to ask you, if I could, something you and I were talking privately on the phone on earlier this week, which is, why aren't we doing more federal land sales in this bill? This. Half of the land west of the Mississippi River, and you're west of the Mississippi River, is owned by the federal government. And I don't think the federal government's a good custodian of the land. I think if you had more private investment, you'd have more jobs, you'd have more businesses there, you'd have more wealth in these states. Well, what percentage roughly of North Dakota is owned by government?
So that's a great question. Not a lot. We have some federal lands in the west. Frankly, the Bakken, the incredibly rich Bakken oil field, does have some federal land and some federal minerals under it. However, we're not bound to the federal land. So we have a lot of state lands, and that's why North Dakota surpassed places like, just take Alaska. Alaska's got more oil than all of us, but they're not even in the top 5, I don't think, anymore in oil production because of the federal lands. Similar to Montana. Montana has a lot of the Bakken, but they don't have the kind of activity that we have.
Point. Yeah. So that federal ownership inhibits the development. So in other words, I mean, this is an important point you're making. If it had all been federally owned land in North Dakota, you wouldn't have had the oil revolution there.
That's exactly right, Steve. Right now we're producing about 1.2 million barrels per day. It's a pretty big contribution to national freedom and security and economic security. So, but that's exactly right. In fact, the Bakken, when Harold Hamm didn't discover the Bakken, but the formula for horizontal drilling and fracking, he did it in Montana. And just about every other mineral acre since has been in North Dakota. And it's not just because of federal lands. There's also federal mineral ownership. There's federal policies that circumvent all kinds of things. I mean, they go around the Missouri River, for example, you end up with the Corps of Engineers more involved than you'd like to have them. We also have some of our Indian lands that have oil, and those people that live on those reservations, in our case, Mandan, Hidatsa, Arikara, do very, very well. They're a successful tribe, a wealthy tribe. So I think with regard to the selling, though, of federal lands, even though North Dakota's not a huge federal land state, your point is right. And it's a lot of real estate. Yep. It doesn't pay taxes, by the way. Right. So that means that cities and communities and schools and parks in these big federal land states, they get what's called in lieu of taxes. In other words, since they don't have any property taxes, then the rest of the tax-paying public pays for those things, those local things. There's a lot of reasons to consider much more sale of the land. And don't get me wrong, I'm from the land of Roosevelt. His presidential library is being built as we speak near Medora, North Dakota. The great conservationist, but he understood the value of the resources above, on top, and under the federal lands. He never intended for them to just be locked down, but rather to be utilized for the greater good.
That's Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. This is the More Money Show. We just got 2 minutes left, Senator, and I wanted to. By the way, one of the reasons I like to have people like Kevin Cramer on is I learn from them, because you're telling me stuff I didn't even know. So that's amazing. And what bothers me, and again, we only have about a minute or two left. Why is it? I hear some of the Western congressmen and senators are saying, no, don't sell the lands, when those states would benefit from more private ownership.
Yeah, I don't know what the reasoning for some people that have those lands. I think some of it's sentiment, quite honestly. There's maybe a distrust. There are other things like the relationship with Native Americans who have a great deal to say. They have to be consulted, and I'm not against any of those things. But in this bill, what we're talking about is a sliver of federal land that butts up against housing developments in cities, so that the cities can actually grow
Yes.
You're talking about less than 0.1% of the federal land. And when you consider how much of our country's federal land, by the way, it's part of why we have trouble with Canada in the soft lumber area. That's one of the big negotiating trade things. It's not so much because Canada, although they do subsidize their soft lumber a great deal. But we, cut our industry off because we don't allow timber to be harvested on our federal land.
Well,
anymore.
Senator, I am going to put you in charge of the guy who's going to change that, because we have to use our resources. We have trillions of dollars worth of them, and states like North and South Dakota and Montana and Utah and Colorado have so many resources, and we're dependent on foreign countries because we can't get it here in the great U.S. of A. Senator Cramer, keep fighting. You are a national hero. This is the More Money Show, and folks, we'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. We are national now. We have affiliates throughout the country, so thank you so much for joining. The Northeast is kind of our home ship, but we have stations as far west as Chicago and Kansas City, so this is wonderful. Thanks for joining. Thanks for helping make our show a success. My next guest is one of the top monetary economists in the country, if not the world. She should be on the Federal Reserve Board, she might be the next Federal Reserve chairman, because she is so knowledgeable about how do you create a sound monetary system. Of course, I'm talking about the great Judy Shelton. Judy, thanks for joining.
Hi, Steve. It's great to be with you.
So you've written so much on this subject. Oh, by the way, is this your latest book, Good as Gold? Is that the latest one? You've written so many books on. Is that the latest?
That's the latest one. Thanks.
Good as Gold. I love that title. That's a great title. I want to make, and you want to make the dollar as good as gold.
Well, I certainly want the dollar to be an honest measure. I think it's meant to serve as a unit of account for the people who are actually operating in the real economy. It's not supposed to be just one more government tool to try to manipulate economic outcomes. So I think we want a dependable dollar that is a store of value you can count on.
Yes. Well said. And that's so simple. And yet I think those 400 economists over at the Federal Reserve Board don't really get that. And that's a big part of the problem. Now, Judy, one of the many reasons I wanted to get you on the show, and thanks, I know how busy you are on a Saturday afternoon, but I wanted to ask why it is that when the inflation rate was higher 4 or 5, 6 months ago, and the Fed lowered interest rates, before the election, and now inflation is lower than it was then, but the Fed announced they're not going to lower interest rates. That looks very blatantly political to me, Judy. It looks like that Chairman Powell was trying to give a little bit of a lift to the Democrats and Kamala Harris before the election, and now there's no love lost between Donald Trump and Jerome Powell, and Powell refused this week to cut rates. And by the way, I could argue either way about whether the rates should be cut, but it doesn't make any sense why they would cut rates 6 months ago, but they won't cut them now.
It doesn't make sense. And here's the problem. The Fed refuses to abide by any kind of monetary rule.
Yes.
So they should at least have a consistent narrative.
Yes.
But they do not. And last September, suddenly they reduced, concerned about the labor market. It was almost immediately apparent that was an ill-placed concern. Mm-hmm. And then they lowered at half that rate, another 2 times, I think, to try to diminish the speculation that the September move had been political. And the new narrative was going to be, we will steadily reduce the interest rate because inflation is steadily coming down. And they stuck with that right up until President Trump was inaugurated. And then they changed the story.
Well, I sure hope they do. And by the way, Judy Shelton and I were both nominated by Donald Trump to be on the Federal Reserve Board. She knows way, way more about Federal Reserve policy than I do. So you were 10 times more qualified than I was. But it is interesting that one of the reasons that senators voted against you was because you basically are for a strong currency and a currency that holds its value. And I guess the politicians don't want that.
Well, inflation mostly serves to the benefit of debtors.
Government.
And there's no bigger debtor than the government.
Good point.
And I don't consider myself a hawk or a dove. I've always said I'm a woodpecker, because I just keep hammering away at this idea that the dollar needs to be a dependable measure. Yeah. I think this opens up the deeper question of what is the appropriate role of a central bank in a free market economy. And I think what we're seeing is that, my first book, since you mentioned books, was predicting the collapse of the Soviet Union. And the reason that country went bankrupt is because the Soviet banking system was a way to channel the savings of the people straight to the government, not to the real economy, not to come up with any productive output that would increase prosperity for real people. It was just to finance a government deficit, which kept growing. And that's the danger that we have when the Fed overly controls the interest rate instead of trying to be just responsive to the market forces of supply and demand for loanable capital.
So when you are on the short list, there are about 4 or 5 people who are being considered to be the next Fed chairman, and there's no secret that you're one of those people on that list, and it's a good list of people who I think are very strong. What if you do become Fed chairman, and I think you'd be fantastic, what are some of the first things that you would do?
The first thing I would do is to question even the concept of deliberately imposing restrictive interest rates. That's all.
What does that mean?
The Federal Reserve acknowledges, ever since it's been at this, what it calls openly a restrictive rate, is that they're kind of phobic about economic activity.
Right.
So they're very leery of growth, and they believe that economic growth is inherently inflationary.
It's ridiculous.
And they don't even like it when the unemployment rate gets too low. And so they deliberately, in order to quell inflation according to their model, try to curtail economic growth in order to reduce demand.
Well, Judy, we only have 90 seconds left, but it's such an important point you're making, which is, and under Reagan, we had growth rates of 5% and 6%, and we had inflation going down. So I don't even understand how they can say when the economy is producing more goods and services, why they think that would mean higher prices.
Right, because this ties in with the whole supply side concept.
Yes.
Where the best way to fight inflation is not to reduce demand, it's to increase supply. So actually, if interest rates were lower, you would have much more access to capital for small and medium-sized businesses who would hire the people who would increase output. And it's that higher level of supply relative to demand that brings inflation down.
Oh, my gosh, Judy, you're just making too much sense. That's the problem. But you know what? I mean, look, to be serious about this, one of the reasons that there's political resistance, what you're talking about, which is so sensible, is it takes power away from people at the Fed and the politicians and puts more power in the hands of the American people.
Well, right. And you asked what I would do. One thing is I have been critical because the Fed has become too powerful, too prominent, and that means too political. And they need to reduce rates and shrink the balance sheet, not have such a huge footprint in financial markets.
Well, Judy, you are Judy Shelton. Her book is good as gold. You're the person to do that, in my opinion. So I'm rooting for you. And thanks for all you do for our country, folks. It's the More Money Show on the Red Apple Audio Network.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Thank you so much for joining. We got a fun second hour ahead. I'm hoping my friend John Catsimatidis, who owns this station, has turned it into such a amazing powerhouse. He told me he's going to call in, and we're going to try to reach him because I want to talk to him a little bit about what's going on with this mayoral race. Big race. I think the election is on Tuesday, so we will be following that very closely. We're talking about the big, beautiful bill. I want you to call in, folks. Tell me what you like about it, what you don't like about it. The polls show most people like the idea of making the Trump tax cuts permanent. I certainly do. I hope you do. But if you're opposed to that, tell me why. Tell me why you want a $4 trillion tax increase. I think it would be a disaster for our country. I think it would be a disaster for our small businesses. I think it would be a disaster for workers and families, but I could be wrong about that. By the way, were we able to reach John Catsimatidis? He's on? John, are you there?
I am here. How are you?
Okay, John Catsimatidis, the first question I have to ask you, can money buy you love?
Can money buy you love? Oh, my God. You know, I remember seeing that movie, and the guy said, do you want to have sex? I'll give you $10,000. And she said, no. And she says, I'll give you $100,000. She said, no. And then she says, I'll give you $1 million. Well, she stopped to think about it for a few minutes.
Well, you and Margot have been married. How many years have you guys been married?
We're together 54 years.
What? She's put you up with you for that long?
Yes, and she's only 59 years old.
Well, you guys are wonderful people. I love you, John, but I love Margot even more. And I want to come to your, what's the next one? How many years?
We're going to have a 55-year anniversary.
I can't wait. I want to be invited to that party.
We're going to have a WABC gala this year.
Oh, I can't wait. Invite me to that, please. Okay, so I want to get
that WABC is number one in the country, certified by Nielsen.
Oh my God, number one, and you have done so much to build this station up to the powerhouse that it is. So I'm proud and privileged to be part of that. So I want to talk to you, if I may, sir, about the mayoral race. You had made a statement a few weeks ago, I think it was, that if the socialist is elected, that you may have to move some of your businesses out of New York. What do you think? Are you for Cuomo? What are you thinking about this race?
Well, I think that, by the way, I was on, at about 10 minutes to 12, I was on Fox talking about the same subject. Yep. And guess who texted me? I was texted, the president was watching.
Ah! Wow. So what did you say?
What I say is that you cannot have a socialist.
Right.
A 32-year-old socialist that's wet behind the ears become mayor of the city of New York with a $100 billion budget.
Yes,
you cannot have a 32-year-old kid that's to run a $100 billion enterprise. Yeah. And I said with Cuomo, I'm rooting for him to beat that socialist in the primary. Yeah. And then I said that with Eric Adams. I said to Eric Adams, if Albany cannot solve your problems, Washington will.
Right.
So, Tom Homan and President Trump supporting loving New York. Yes. Guess what? And this is what I said on Fox too, because we got a new sheriff in town, that the criminals in New York City right now are scared that they're going to be caught on the streets in New York. And guess what? You're not going to go to the DA and get out of jail in 2 hours. Mm-hmm. You're going to go straight to Guantanamo, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Mm-hmm. And guess what? The criminals are scared. And that's what it's all about. And it's not Albany that's solving the problems. It's being solved by President Trump, and it's being solved by Tom Homan, who love New York City. And so, that's the way
John,
enough is enough, Steve.
Well said. By the way, we only have about a minute left before we go to the Pains, but I wanted to let you know, I think you know this, that I hail from the great city of Chicago. We essentially did did elect a socialist as our mayor, and the city has gone to crap.
And how many black kids are dying in the streets of Chicago?
Exactly. So this is why you are exactly right, John. Well, John, thanks for allowing me to have the privilege of doing this show. Get back to Margot, take her to the beach or something like that, and we will be right back, folks, with Ryan and Bob Payne, two of the best in the business, to explain to you how you can make more money.
Hey, it's Ryan Payne and Bob Payne from Payne Capital Management. Of course, that's Payne, coming to you every week on the More Money Show, talking about the markets, the economy, your retirement. And Bob, a lot to unpack this week. We've got turmoil in the Middle East. We've got oil prices spiking right now. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says he's not cutting interest rates. So we got a lot to talk about today, especially when it's in the context of all our listeners' retirement.
Well, right. I mean, everybody on the media is always telling us what's going wrong. What I want to spend time today is talking about what's going right. And the first thing I want to talk about is the sun came out the first day of June, or the first day of summer. I mean, it was gorgeous in the city yesterday. It's gorgeous at the Jersey Shore right now. I'll tell you what, life is good when the sun is shining.
I literally almost forgot what it looked like when the sun is out. That's how bad it got in. If I was to go long anything this last week, it should have been sunshine this weekend, because we have it. And Bob, I think you're right. I mean, we got to bring the sunshine today. I think, a lot of people, a lot of investors have been looking at all the gray clouds, and the media loves to talk about the gray clouds. But man, oh man, there is a lot of things to be positive and optimistic about. And I think you need to allocate your portfolio accordingly.
Well, there's an old expression, right, that the sun doesn't shine on the same dog's butt every day, right? So it tends to shine in different places. And this year, it's been shining on the emerging markets, places like India, Taiwan, Latin America. Markets are up 20 to 25% year to date. So if you're in a diversified portfolio right now, you're celebrating not just the sunshine with us, you're celebrating your portfolio right now. You're having a really good year.
Well, and meanwhile, if you just own the S&P 500 or U.S. large cap stocks, you've made no money this year. And what's cruel about that, Bob, is the fact that the market's been wild, all over the place, up and down. You think you'll be rewarded, and so far you haven't. You're basically up 1% for the year. Ouch, that hurts. But to your point, and this is why we preach it every week, if you're starting to consider living off your portfolio, you always need something working. And this is why it's important to have a global portfolio, right? Have energy exposure in your portfolio. I couldn't have predicted this week that energy was going to spike, but it did, but we already have it in our portfolio. And that's really the way you need to build your portfolio, is preparing for anything that can happen, because you can't predict it ahead of time.
Well, you can predict it, right? But typically you're going to be wrong, just like most economists, right? You predict, hey, we have these huge tariffs coming. That's going to be horrible for Europe, except for Germany's up 25% year to date. It's going to be awful for Mexico, except for Mexico's up 25% year to date. So the markets are smarter than all of us. And the key is not to try and predict and beat the market with your predictions. It's to stay fully invested in the strategy that gets you to your goals. And there's a lot of good stuff happening right now. And you don't want to miss the boat.
Yeah, it's a great point, because what keeps you from your goals is all the negativity in the media every week, right? You always know about what's bad and why not to invest. I can give you thousands of reasons not to invest, but no one's giving you the reason to invest. And you need that reason, because you need the growth in your portfolio long term to live off your portfolio, because the cost of living over time goes up. And that's why it's so important to focus on your goals and building a portfolio based on those goals, not based on the latest media headline, because it's just not helpful, Bob.
Well, Ryan, can't invest. There's too much geopolitical risk. There's, too much uncertainty. Of course there is, but at some point there will be certainty, but the market anticipates that way ahead of time. So, when those hostilities end, suddenly the price of oil is going to drop, and that's a global tax cut for the entire planet, right? Every company, every country, and especially every investor like you are listening to us right now.
Yeah, and that's why you have to be proactive, because if you're sitting in a money market fund right now and you're waiting for that conflict to end, right, you're missing the big opportunity. And meanwhile, Bob, the Federal Reserve has hinted that they may cut interest rates not once this year, twice. Remember, your money market fund was paying 5% a year ago. It's down closer to 4% now. It could be like 3.5% by the end of the year. That's a horrible return for you to live off your money in retirement. And I think most of us aren't thinking about that right now. We're not being proactive enough, and you're going to pay the price for that.
Well, I've always said nothing makes you crazier than watching your neighbor get wealthy. So if you're sitting there as one of those folks with that $7 trillion that's sitting in a money market fund, Where's the pain point, Rye? Is it at 4%? Is it 3.5%? Is it 3%? If the money market gets to 2.5%, at what point are you going to cave and get invested? I mean, I don't want to take that risk with my portfolio.
No, you don't. And meanwhile, you can actually get great yields locking into a portfolio right now. You talk about the international markets. You're getting dividends that are closer to 4%, and they're increasing over time, right? If you want an increasing income investment, we talk about tax-free bonds. You can lock into a portfolio right now at 3-4%. That's the equivalent of getting like 8% if you live in New York and you're in a high tax bracket. So it's a great time to create some consistency in a world that's more inconsistent than ever. And that's the whole idea when you're living off your portfolio or getting close to it, is how much consistency can I build in? And I think a lot of us are missing the boat right now because of fear and, maybe just ignorant about how much money we have in our portfolio that's even invested or sitting in cash. We don't even know.
What it sounds like to me, Rye, it's like there's a lot of people that hate this bull market. This is a big, booming bull market. It's happening kind of in stealth mode, right? Because the bond market's now going up. International markets are going up. Commodities are going up. There's a lot of places where you could be making money right now. And it's not getting the headlines. Like nobody seems to care. I care. And I hope you do.
Well, it's right. Cause it's like you said, everything's hiding in plain sight and no one's talking about the positives. And you know what? You need the positives, right? Because that's what gives you the ability to invest. You need to know that you can get income on your money. You need to know that right now there's great opportunity to build your portfolio for the long term and not wait on it. And that's my biggest fear right now. We talk about this every week, but paralysis by analysis, right? Not figuring out what to do because there's just too much uncertainty. There's too many conflicting views. But I'll tell you what is certain. You are going to have to live off your money, and inflation is eroding your purchasing power. And that's a big problem as you get closer to retirement or retired now.
And that's true, Rye. You have that hidden, insidious tax of inflation. Now, it was 9% just a couple of years ago, and it's down to 2.7, but it's not at 2. It's not at the Fed's target. And, if it does get there, then the Federal Reserve probably will lower interest rates. But meanwhile, you're going to have the price of everything. The cost of everything you buy is going higher. You have to be certain that your money grows net of inflation and net of taxes. That's why you want to be in the equity market and you want to have tax-free municipal bonds, for crying out loud. When you look at your tax bracket, you add it up with what you're getting in tax-free bonds, it's like getting a 6-7% return risk-free.
Yeah, you need to know what income you're generating on your portfolio. You need to know what you can live off of. And if you're thinking right now, Bob Ryan, I get it. I need to figure this out. Yes, the world doesn't end very often. I listen to your segments. Well, here's your shot to do it. We keep 10 slots open for the entire show. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, Bob and I will run for you our now famous Total Financial Master Plan. We'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. We go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. We'll give you a bird's eye view of your entire financial life, and we'll hone in on all these issues you need to address today. You need that income plan for retirement. You need to figure out how to take Social Security, how to draw from your portfolio in the most tax-efficient manner. Factor in inflation. We will build you that dynamic income plan so you don't run out of money. We're going to look at diversification. Yes, your portfolio may have been a yo-yo so far this year, up and down, wild, extremely volatile, or maybe you've been sitting with way too much money in money market funds, CDs, cash, trying to figure out what to do, paralysis by analysis. Bob and I will put together a full investment game plan. We'll tie it to your goals. We'll show you how to grow your wealth, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we'll look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to sell you those high-cost, tax-inefficient products, whether it's an annuity, mutual fund, brokerage product, structured product. We'll do a deep dive of every investment you own. We'll show you how to reduce the cost and optimize your portfolio for taxes. Not what you make. It's what you take. You'll get our full tax playbook. We've got 10 slots if you saved over $1 million for your retirement.
All you have to do is text or call 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. Or just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC. If you're one of our next 10 callers, you've saved over $1 million for your retirement. Our team of financial advisors and certified financial planners will help you to craft your own personal total financial master plan. Now, there's no obligation. There's no cost. There's no strings attached. All you have to do is text or call 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. Or just simply call 844-PLAN-NYC. That's 844-PLAN-NYC.
Hey, if you want to learn more about myself and Bob and our firm, Payne Capital Management, of course, that's Payne, simply go to BeBullish.com. That's BeBullish.com. Stay tuned. We got more money coming your way.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Imagine this. The best pasta sauce you have ever tasted sits abandoned on a plate. Wasted sauce. That is a tragedy. If only you had used Barilla al Bronzo pasta. Its bronze-cut texture holds your sauce and scoops up every last drop. The Italians call that scarpetta. Capture sauce the Italian way. Barilla al Bronzo. Click or tap the banner to find out more.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thanks so much for joining. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. We've been having a lot of fun on the show, talking a lot about issues. By the way, this is the 50-year anniversary of the movie Jaws, when nobody would go to the beaches for many summers because they were so terrified of sharks. What a movie that was. And, of course, the most famous line from that is, it looks like we're going to need a bigger boat. Well, we're going to need a bigger tax cut. I want to get this tax cut done. I want it to be big and beautiful. I think we're well on the way. We talked, earlier on the show to Senator Kramer of North Dakota, who did a wonderful job explaining how this could possibly get done before 4th of July so that Trump would be signing this bill. Wouldn't it be appropriate if he signed this huge tax cut and this huge reduction in government spending on the day that we celebrate America's independence? Let's get an independence from debt and an independence from slow growth and an independence from inflation. So I'm very much in favor of that bill. I think it can be improved. By the way, I hope that everyone is getting the Unleash Prosperity daily hotline. And if you're not, I mean, I don't understand why you're not getting it, because it is absolutely free. It costs you nothing. This is something that a lot of us put together. It's a great team we have of economists and political insights, people like John Fund and others who you know from National Review and Wall Street Journal. And get it. We can email it to you to your doorstep. That is to your computer doorstep every 5 mornings a week. Just go to unleashprosperity.com, sign up, and if you like it, we'll keep sending it to you. I think you will like it. We have 100,000 readers. But if you don't like it, you can just unsubscribe, but that does not cost you 1 penny. So that's unleashprosperity.com. Sign up, folks, and you'll be the smartest person in the room. Now, I wanted to make a point. By the way, I will be taking your calls at the bottom of the hour. So, the number for the More Money hotline, I think most of you know that by now, 1-800-848-9222 or 1-800-848-9222 or 1-800-848-WABC. So I want to hear your views on the issues of the day. And the one that I'm kind of interested in, I'm going to kind of give you my little riff on this. And some of you may like it, some of you may not, but this is a free country. This is freedom of speech radio. So tell me if you agree or disagree on this. So I'm very, very much in favor of what Tom Homan and the administration are doing on immigration policy. I think that Tom Homan is a hero of mine. He's a good friend of mine, by the way. What he's done at the border is he's a national hero. He has cut the amount of illegal crossings into our country by, I believe the number, I know it's over 90%. I read the other day it's 92 or 93%. He's done this in 3 months. They had that border secure within 3 months. Tom, I'm saluting you. That's an amazing performance. We now have the border basically secure. I mean, there's some people who still get across the border surreptitiously, but the fact that, we're not being overrun by illegal immigration is a good thing for our country. I think everybody agrees with that. And he's done it, by the way, in a very humane and very sensible fashion in terms of deportations, where he's basically saying the people who are criminals or gang members or people who've committed federal crimes or people who are members of gangs that are a threat to the American people, we get rid of those people. You're out of here. You are out of here. We're putting you on the first bus or first plane out of the U.S. and you're not coming back if you violated any of our criminal statutes or if you're doing things that are harmful to our country. And by the way, I would add to that, if foreign people come into the country and they try to go on welfare, no. You can come into this country if you want a job, if you want economic opportunity, but we do not want our welfare system. In my humble opinion, I do not believe our welfare system should be a magnet for people around the world, or we're going to have 100 million people trying to come in the country for free healthcare, free food, free housing, free this, free that, free everything. So my position always has been immigration, yes. But it has to be legal, and immigration, yes, but welfare, no. And here's what concerns me, and some of you may disagree with me, and if you disagree with on this, I want to hear it from you. But I'm not thrilled by these deportations that are going on, the raids of some of the farms, some of the agricultural establishments, some of the chicken processing centers, some of the factories, and they come in and they clear out anybody who might be an illegal immigrant. And I think that's heavy-handed. I'm not in favor of that. I am in favor of making sure people, stopping the flow. But if somebody's been in the country and they're working, even if they're here illegally, now I get it. They're here illegally. I get it. I understand that. They've broken the law and coming in. But if they've been here and they haven't committed a crime and they're working and they're paying their taxes, I'm not so sure deportation is a great idea. What are we going to do? Just close down our farms, close down our chicken processing centers and so on? Now, some people say, oh, no, Americans will fill those jobs. No, they won't. Sorry. The real answer to that is they will not. And I've been to many of these farms where the immigration enforcers come in and they very humanely, they, say, hey, you're here illegally. You got to leave, blah, blah, blah. And then it's either a factory or a farm establishment. And sure enough, and by the way, they may even hire some American workers to take their place. And you talk to the people who run these businesses. 3 months later, they're all gone because Americans just will not do a lot of this work. And immigrants do them and they work hard. So that's my position. I'm not in favor of mass deportations, but I'd love to hear from you. I want your opinion on this because I know people feel very strongly on both sides of it. And I'm trying to figure out what is the best solution. How do we deal with this? How do we do it in a way that, as I said, is humane, is good for our economy, is fair to American workers? And by the way, the evidence is pretty clear. We have a shortage of workers in this country today, not a shortage of jobs. So anybody out there with any skills say, I can't find a job. Well, maybe you can't find exactly the job you want, but the jobs are out there. I guarantee it. I mean, the Labor Department shows that there are 6 million job openings today, and that's going to climb as Trump's tax cuts create even more economic opportunity for our country. So call in on 1-800-848-9222 if you'd like to weigh in on this. I'm looking for solutions. I don't know what the ideal solution is. I'm willing to admit it. Maybe you have to self-deport and then you've got an employer lined up and then you can petition to come back in. Maybe that would work. Maybe if you can prove you've been in the country for a certain long length of time and you've played by the rules, you paid your taxes, et cetera, we give you and you have to pay a penalty maybe, and you pay that penalty, and then you can say, I'm just throwing out ideas because, as I said, I don't know the solution, but I don't like the idea of deporting people. Because I think it gets messy. I think it gets ugly. I don't think it has the American people's support, but I want to hear from you. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we will take your calls. 1-800-848-9222. If you want to talk about something else related to the immigration issue, I'd love to hear from you. This is a hot button issue. People feel passionately about it one way or the other. And we will be right back to talk about this with your calls. 1-800-848-9222. That's the More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Nurses, are you tired of spending weeks or even months finding the perfect job that matches your specialty with your ideal shift and salary? LinkedIn has improved your job search experience. Search by specialty, the shift you want to work, and the salary you want to make. Go to linkedin.com/nurses and begin searching today. That's linkedin.com/nurses.
Note, side effects may include less time finding the perfect job, working a shift that you love with a salary that can take you to St. Thomas, Jamaica, and continuous smiling because of how simple this process was.
Choice Hotels gets you more for your money so you can maximize any road trip. Like these road trippers making waffles and eating fresh fruit in their natural habitat. The breakfast area at a Comfort Inn. I just love seeing a vacation maximized in the wild. Check into more. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Hulu, presenting Paradise. Paradise is Hulu's critically acclaimed addictive drama series starring Sterling K. Brown, Julianne Nicholson, and James Marsden. The Daily Beast calls Paradise your next TV obsession, and the New York Times says it's exhilarating in all the right ways. Paradise is for your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Drama Series. For more information, visit fyc.hulu.com.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So, we're ready to take your calls. The question of the day is, what do you think about deportations? Do you think it's a good policy? I'm on the side no, but I could be persuaded otherwise. That's why I want to hear from you. And so if you have a strong opinion one way or the other about it, I think we have one line open. That More Money hotline is 1-800-848-9222. I want to remind you to get the hotline. Go to the unleashprosperity.com website and get that hotline every morning for free. It costs you nothing. And let's go. Let's go to the lines. We've got one open line, but we have a pretty full switchboard, and we have Joe from Brooklyn. Joe, thanks for calling in.
Hi, hey Steve, how are you? I'm from Brookhaven out in Suffolk County.
Oh, Brookhaven, sorry. Okay.
Yeah,
I wrote that down wrong.
Suffolk County. Yeah, it sounds like Brooklyn. But I love listening to. I like you, but I was called about the bill. But if I could touch on the immigration, because I'm sitting here, I totally disagree with you. Hold on,
Joe, hold on. You're saying you disagree with me on deportation?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
100%.
so make your case, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 60 seconds to make your case about why we should be deporting.
Okay, deport because where they're not vetted. I disagree. No amnesty. They are taking Americans' jobs. I believe Americans will fill the jobs.
Okay.
I love immigrants. I love legal immigrants.
Yeah.
But it's already being done by the administration. You're supposed to self-deport and get back in line, and we will vet you. What's that?
You're making sense. You're doing well, Joe. Keep going.
Go. Yeah, I've been 30 years in business, Long Island. I can tell you the skinny. I worked for Arnie Greenberg. Son Snapper was my boss for 10 years. I worked on Meadow Lane, Billionaire Row. I worked for a lot of rich Democrats, Republican. I've seen it before my eyes. I've seen the job sites, and the illegal immigrants take over every trade on Long Island. And they undercut us. We have to pay workers' comp, and I hire American citizens. Every trade. You don't know if you have murderers, rapists, gangbangers who are doing the jobs during the day, and then are they and at night go out and terrorize. We don't know who's next door.
Okay.
No.
All right, Joe, let me interrupt you there because you've made a good case, a very persuasive case. By the way, that's why I take callers like yours, because you guys are so commonsensical and you're making a lot of good points. Now, let me ask you this, Joe. Are you an employer yourself?
Yes, I have. I've been 30 years in a small construction company here on the island. Yes.
Okay, so you hire workers. Now, you do go all through the authorizations. You're not hiring illegals.
No, I don't.
No. Okay. So then my question for you, but you do hire legal immigrants.
I will hire anybody with a legal with a Social Security number.
Got it. Okay, and how are they good workers?
Requirement. And they give out fake Social Security numbers.
Oh, I know.
That's what's going on.
But Joe, hold on. Joe, I'm asking you a question, though. Of the legal immigrants you're hiring, are they good workers?
I don't even, they're fantastic. Well, I know from being in the business for 40 years, construction business, I've been swinging a hammer on the East End. They're fantastic workers, fabulous workers. Yeah. But I have actually, my people are all American citizens, but I'm not discriminating. But they are fantastic, talented people.
Yeah.
Nobody's denying that.
Yeah. Well, Joe, okay, look, you made a great point. Thank you for calling in because I really appreciate that call. You make a lot of good sense, my friend, and I appreciate your viewpoint very much. So let's see if we can get maybe a different opinion. Let's go with Richard in Long Island.
Hello.
Richard. Yes.
Steve, first off, I just wanted to let you know I enjoy listening to you and Larry every Saturday while I'm working.
Thank you.
Fortunately, I don't have a comment about immigration. I wanted to ask you what your take is on Bitcoin.
Okay. So Bitcoin is something that I do not invest in Bitcoin. I wish I had because Bitcoin has made so much money. Are you a Bitcoin investor?
No, but my son has quite a bit of his money in Bitcoin, and he's an absolute fanatic. And he's,
when did he buy it? When did he start buying it?
He bought it when it was under $10,000.
Oh my God. He must be a rich man today. I'm envious because I wish I had done that. I have a friend whose son mowed lawns and just did, teenage kind of work and made a couple $1,000s, and he invested all that money in Bitcoin about 10 years ago. And now he's wealthier than I am. So, it's a great country. Look, my view is I don't really understand, cryptos that well. I'm a little suspicious of those, but I am glad they're out there. It's a free country. If you want to invest in them, go have at it. I worry that there might be a crash in these at some point. But I do believe that it's a good thing that we have these alternative currencies to government central banks because I think it keeps them honest. It's up to you folks if you want to invest them. I can't give you advice about whether it's a good investment or not at this point. As I said, for the last 10, 15 years, they've been very, very good investments. Whether that will continue, I don't know, Richard, but it's a free country and I don't want the government to get rid of, these cryptocurrencies because the government hasn't done a very good job of holding the value of its currency as we've been talking about on the show. All right, let's go to Steve in New Jersey.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for taking the call. Been with you from day one. Usually we're on the same page. I'm going to partially agree with you, partially disagree. You ready?
Okay, go.
I agree. The illegal migrants who have not committed crimes, who are working, contributing to the U.S. economy, don't leave them alone, please. Right now, we need them. Okay?
Yes.
And I also say, the report came out, Social Security and Medicare projected to go broke in 10 years, these people are also paying into that system for future
generations.
Yes,
you are exactly right, sir. You are 100% correct.
Right.
The more immigrants we have come in and paying Social Security, the better it is for the system because it's like gravy for the system. They pay in, and by the time they retire, they've got kids paying in. So it's a one-generational positive impact of the Social Security system. You're 100% correct. Keep going. You're hitting 1,000. Keep going.
Okay. Okay, here's where we disagree, right?
Okay. All right. I'm ready. I'm sitting down.
I rejected this argument from you and the WSJ crowd for years. We need these people to do jobs Americans won't do, and here's why.
Yeah.
First of all, they used to say, remember, they'll pick lettuce for $2 an hour. And then little bloggers like me started saying, wait a minute, isn't that a violation of the federal federal laws? Right. You got to pay the minimum wage, right? That's admitting there's a black market for labor. Get those people under subpoena. They stopped saying it. So here's what I say. The ones that are working under the table, Steve, they're breaking the law, and they are taking jobs away from able-bodied Americans. Lastly, so I'll make let me just rope in there. Americans will do those jobs if you get them off, and this is what's being accomplished in the big, beautiful bill. Get the ones who can work off of Social Security and Medicaid, the ones that can work, and they'll stop giving them free stuff. They'll be forced to take those jobs. Also, the college students who need money, rather than the government just handing them free money, make them go like you and I had to do, Steve. Let them go get jobs. And Americans will have to. They'll be forced to do those jobs. We need the so-called illegal migrant.
Okay, so Steve, you're making good points, and I want to interrupt you for a second because I want to ask you one last question before I let you go. First of all, you make a lot of sense. And I would simply say this, that firsthand, when I've gone to some of these like the chicken factories and so on, or some of the agricultural fields, what happens is the INS, the Immigration Service will raid these, either the factories or the fields, and then they'll clear them out and they'll send them home. And then, what tends to happen, this is what happens in real life, not just in the textbooks, is so they'll actually hire American workers to come in, maybe teenagers, et cetera, to come in and do these jobs. And guess what? 2 months later, they've all quit. And there's nobody working at them again. Now, I would say, and I want your response to this, Steve, that part of the problem is we have this incredibly generous welfare system that makes it very difficult to get some Americans off their butts out in front of the TV instead, or playing computer games and doing some of these jobs.
I totally agree. Brilliant minds think alike. I agree with everything you just said. Totally. Take away that welfare, as you said, and that was my point before, but I'll state it in your terms. Take away those bennies that are encouraging able-bodied Americans to sit home. They'll be forced to take those jobs. All right, but we still keep an open mind for the illegal migrant labor that's contributing to society.
Yeah. So good point, Steve. All right, Steve, I've got to interrupt you. Great call, as always. These have been great calls today. So we've got one line open, 1-800-848-9222 or 1-800-848-WABC. I take your calls because I learn a lot from listening to you, as all our listeners do. I think, Mr. Producer, we have Vinny in Suffolk County on.
Yeah, this is Joe?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi, Steve. Nice talking to you. I agree with your first caller, Joe, because I'm a tradesperson.
Okay.
Everyone on the job now is an illegal alien. I don't know if they're illegal or if they're not. Nobody really knows. And it's just not right that certain trades or jobs are being overwhelmed, and that's why Americans cannot do those jobs.
But Vinny, you're making a good point. There are some professions that have traditionally been done by immigrants for 100 years. I mean, it's been kind of the whole history of our country that some jobs have been filled by immigrants. Do you think they're displacing American workers?
Doubt. Because Americans can, who wants to dig ditches for $10 an hour? It's supply and demand. So if you're taking advantage of the cheap labor of an immigrant, number one, that's wrong to begin with. Basically, it's capitalizing on cheap labor.
Yes.
Where an American can't dig that ditch for $10 an hour because he's got to have medical. He might have children at home he's got to pay for. Whereas the illegal, they don't get married. They'll have 4 kids. They don't get married, so the kids can get free schooling, free medical.
Yep.
You know, so how does an American compete with that? Who now, as an American, I need medical. I need to send my kids to school and pay for that. And it's
Vinny, let me ask you a question on the way out. I mean, you're making all good points. So do you think that we should be deporting these folks?
Definitely. If they're here illegally, they should be, because, we're a nation of laws.
Send them back. Okay. Vinny, this is a good point. I think so far most of the calls are in your favor and against me on this one. So that's interesting. I think I'm losing this debate.
I have no problem with legal
I get it.
Immigration.
Yeah, me neither. Okay, Vinny, I want to try to fit in.
That as a country, instead of taking in the cheap labor that is displacing Americans that are barely getting by, why don't we take the cream of the crop from other countries?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly in favor of doing that, Vinny. Great call, my friend. Mr. Producer, do we have any more callers?
Joe in New Jersey.
We got Joe in New Jersey.
Joe in New Jersey.
Yes, sir.
You got to break this tie for me, sir.
I will, actually. I think they should only go after the criminals. I do not think they should go after everybody. It should definitely be the criminals. But that's not the reason why I called. First off, I get Unleash every day to my email. It is the only reliable source of information. It's the only trusted source of information. I get it. I look forward to it.
And
it's
by the
delightful.
way, folks, I did not pay Joe to call in. But it's a very nice testimonial. I think you'll love it, by the way, folks. Just go to unleashprosperity.com. Get it for free if you like it, as Joe does. We'll keep sending it to you. If you don't like it, just unsubscribe, but it's free. Thank you for that nice comment. What else do you have to say, Joe?
Unreliable sources of information. But the great bill, the tax bill, I do believe for the 73 million baby boomers that are coming through, they should definitely not tax Social Security.
Yes.
I think it's imperative for the Republicans to continue with their lives, because I think they'll get a heck of a lot more voters if they get rid of the Social Security taxes. I don't think it's fair to begin with, but I think it's a good move for them politically.
Great call, Joe. Thank you. I agree with you, my friend. I don't understand why we tax people and then we promise them benefits, and then when we pay them the benefits, we tax them again. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. I'll tell you, sir, what does make sense, and that is that we should convert Social Security into an optional 401k plan. So every young worker under the age of 35, starting tomorrow, should be able to put 10% of their paycheck, instead of sending it into Social Security, they should put it into an individual 401k plan, which is an index fund, and you let that money grow. And if we've been doing that, by the way, George W. Bush was right when he talked about this 20 years ago. If we had done this 20 years ago, the average worker would have over $200,000 in a private account. That is the way to go. The solution to Social Security is to convert it into a system where every young worker can put their money into the market. If they do that, they will be rich by the time they retire. This is a crappy system we have right now. Social Security is the worst investment that you will ever make, especially if you're under the age of 40. And so we should stop robbing from our kids. Let them put that in the market. If the market does as well over the next 40 years as it's done in the last 40 years, we're talking about 40 years from now, Dow 2 million. And every worker should be invested in America. It's a way of making a nation of capitalists. I'd make it voluntary. We got to go, folks. The 2 hours up. On the way out, let me just wish you a happy weekend, and now we will hear from Ryan and Bob Payne on how to make more money.
Ryan Payne and Bob Payne back again on the More Money Show from Payne Capital Management. Of course, that's Payne, talking about the markets, the economy, and your retirement. Guys, I was reading Barron's this weekend. I know what you're thinking. You read, Ryan?
I didn't actually know you could read.
Actually, I saw the pictures. I actually didn't read the article. But it did talk about the 3 biggest mistakes you can make in retirement right now. And I thought these are great points. I thought we could discuss them on the podcast today. And I think the one that we're seeing a lot right now is when you have a lot of volatility and you have a lot of uncertainty, is this a feeling that you have to do something. And I think one of the bigger mistakes that investors can make right now is making too many decisions with their portfolio because they feel like they have to do something.
Well, I'll tell you who learned that lesson in a big way was back in the late 90s. We had the day traders. The Time Magazine had day traders on their cover, right? Doctors, lawyers, corporate executives quitting their job because it was so easy to make money in the stock market. And they all lost everything, not just a little bit. They wiped themselves out simply because they overtraded their accounts.
Yeah, and I think right now it's almost like my neighbor's making money in this, making money in that. You know, it's kind of like the cocktail party talk. And I know, Corey, you see this with your clients right now too. It's like, maybe shouldn't we be trying out some of these other investments over here and seeing people getting maybe lured into some of these more exotic type of investments on Wall Street that they never asked about before.
Yeah, you get these all the time. Throughout the years, they change of like what it is that people are getting pitched. But especially right now, when people look at their safety money and they're saying, okay, I can get 4% on a money market or maybe 4 to 5% on a bond, which actually much better rates than we've been getting in the last decade. But people are still saying, that's not that great. But then they get dangled with these other opportunities over here that have like higher yields. They call them high yield bonds, which are just junk bonds. There's these like private credit strategies, but they're saying, but look at all these great returns that I can get over here. But usually there's a reason that those higher returns are attached to them. And usually there's more risk. And that's really what you want to look at is they're always going to sell you the next big thing. And it's always going to look more attractive than what's out there. But there's a reason.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and nobody really thinks like, this great investment for the big clients, well, why are they offering it to me? No one seems to question that.
Meanwhile, the headlines every day in the news is how every college endowment, every big institution is trying to offload this private credit. It's like they're like begging them to take it off their hands because they realize that they haven't made any money in the last couple of years and they're totally illiquid. And, and they're not, they're not able to cash in on these great returns because they're no longer there.
And where are they going to dump those investments? On you, the retail investor, right? That's the way it always works.
And isn't it amazing that, and they refer to the retail investor as the dumb money? Listen, everybody listeners right now, Wall Street calls you the dumb money. That's us, right? And we're outperforming them all this year.
What's remarkable about it is you think we've learned our lesson, right? This is a lot like the subprime mortgages that we saw, back mortgages back in 2007, 2008. And we're seeing all the same type of investments come up again. It's like people completely forgot what happened in the past and are doomed to make the same mistakes again. We say on Wall Street, it's a very short-term memory, kind of like the weather. And I think that's what you're seeing right now is the animal spirits are out and people are willing to take more risk in more, we'll call them complex products.
Court, you and I were talking about this the other day and you're like, well, if I can borrow, and I'm an individual and I can borrow cheaper than these companies, it just tells you how much risk they are. They have to take so much risk. To borrow money. Why would anybody want their money there?
Right. And I think that's the trouble right now is people do watch the news, and especially over the last several years, the S&P 500, which is what the news is always referencing when you hear the markets are up or the markets are down, it's really been outperforming a diversified portfolio, right? And it's because those big technology companies have been the name of the game. That's where all the growth has been coming from. So anytime you compare that to a diversified portfolio, it's been kind of lackluster the last several years. There's actually been a lot of talk about how people look at it as more of like a performance detractor than actually like a risk adjuster.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though you go back decades and decades and the 60-40 portfolio holds up over time, but everyone is suddenly saying, does the 60-40 even work anymore? Maybe we should throw that out the window. And that's really starting to become a question now.
And we've lived it, right? Literally, if you look at after the great financial crisis, for a decade, it was called the most hated bull market of all time because it was so hard to keep people invested. They were so skittish. Any kind of sell you had in the market, they wanted to panic out. And if you look at that 10 years or so, markets basically went straight up. And the risk was very low. Valuations were very low. Now you're at a point where valuations are historically high. Everybody wants to get in at the same time. It's really been since the pandemic. The animal spirits are out, and it's just like retail investors tend to do that, right? They want to put most of the money in when the risk is high, and they don't want their money in when the risk is low. And this is like why we have a job because, invariably people want to make bad decisions.
Yeah. The other thing too, I think is really a salient point here is the fact that a lot of investors lose sight of the bigger picture, right? Like they might have, a 401k from a job from 10 years ago that they forgot about, or, a lot of times a client will call and say, well, look, I keep money over at Schwab because I think that's going to be more diversified. It's going to be safer. But what you end up finding out is that portfolio is completely opposite of what we're doing for them. So there's no concentrated effort. And
we find that pretty often. And you have a bunch of funds. They all sound like these fancy funds. They all sound a little different. One is like a growth strategy. One is like, your long-term strategic allocation, whatever it is. They all just own the S&P 500. They all own Apple and Google and Microsoft, Nvidia. And the problem is it's great. Those things are doing well and people tend to look at your past performance, but you also need to say, okay, if I back tested this to how the markets did in like a 2008 scenario, God forbid that happens again, you want to make sure you know what your downside is. And a lot of people don't realize that when you have all this over concentration, your downside risk is a lot higher.
Well, I think too, like, and this is why I think it's really important to run a financial plan, is that I think a lot of times people just forget about things. They forget about an account. And, when you go through and you're like, oh, I had this 401k or I have this IRA, like you can actually go through and say, okay, we've got a concerted goal here. We know where we're going. And then they find all these accounts that they didn't realize that they had.
It's so true, Chris. I mean, people just, look, life keeps you busy, right? You're focused on your family, on your career, on your lifestyle. The last thing that really gets focused on are people's finances. So, once things are in a spot, they think it's better to keep it there than to change it because it takes too much time and energy.
Yeah, and the great irony is a lot of times we put accounts at lots of different places because we think we're diversifying, but then we find out that, well, at all these different places, your money looks pretty much the same. And I think that's probably one of the best risk management tools is to understand what you own, where it's owned, and how it all works together, doesn't work together. And I think that's the exercise everyone needs to do, especially when you're thinking about retiring and drawing from your portfolio. Because I think a lot of people are going to be surprised they're taking way more risk than they thought they were taking. And that's what that exercise basically tells you.
Well, how many times have we seen investors, as soon as you get a downturn in the market, they stop contributing to their 401k. They stop opening their statements, right? It's, it's an emotional reaction and a learned behavior that is really hard people. But you know what? Things may be changing, right? We went through the Great Depression. My parents saw the Great Depression, your grandparents, and they were scarred by that. Now you have, I see with a lot of baby boomers, they've made so much money in this big boom and bull market that we've been in for the last 50 years that they don't see the downside anymore. Like every dip's an opportunity. And that could be a little scary, right? It could lead to a huge, gigantic melt up like we've been predicting. But I'm wondering at what point people are going to get too greedy and too aggressive.
If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, myself and Bob and our team at Payne Capital will run for you our total financial master plan. And we'll do that with no obligation or cost. It's a full holistic review. We literally look at everything. There's not a firm out there that will do this work up front. We go as far as building you your own personalized financial portal. We give you a bird's eye view of your entire financial life, and we'll hone in on every financial issue you need to address today, whether it's that income plan for retirement. How do you take Social Security? There's a lot of ways to take it, but one right way for you. How do you draw from your portfolio the most tax efficient way? We'll give you a full income plan, factor in inflation so you don't run out of money. We're going to look at diversification. Markets have been all over the place, up and down. Has your portfolio been extremely volatile? Or have you been sitting in cash? Paralysis by analysis. Can't figure out what to do. We'll put together a full diversified investment game plan, show you how to grow your wealth, tie it to your goals, but most importantly, protect it over the rest of your life. And we're going to look at fees and taxes. Wall Street loves to sell you high cost, tax inefficient products, whether it's an annuity, mutual fund, insurance product, brokerage product. We're going to go through every investment you have, deep dive. We're going to show you how to reduce all the internal costs and optimize your portfolio for taxes. It's not what you make. It's what you take. You'll get our full tax playbook. We literally have 4 slots left. If you saved over $1 million for your retirement, all you need to do is call or text at 844-752-6692. That's 844-752-6692. If you call or text us right now at 844-752-6692, that's 844-PLAN-NYC, 844-PLAN-NYC.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
Life insurers put life into the things you live for. The new factory that's hiring your neighbors. Maintenance on the bridge that keeps traffic flowing. The paycheck that puts pizza night on the table. Life insurers contribute $8 trillion to communities and local economies through bond purchases and other investments, and protect the financial security of 90 million American families, like yours. See how life insurers put life into America at acli.com. Paid for by the American Council of Life Insurers.